We have overtaken China. Now, whether beating China on this front is something to be celebrated or not could be up for debate. Data from the United Nations Population Fund has made it official. India's population has surpassed 142.86 crores, slightly higher than China's 142.57 crores. It is for the first time India has overtaken China's population, and also the first time in 6 decades that China's pace of population growth has dropped. Indians now constitute 1/5 of humanity and are greater than the entire population in numbers of Europe or Africa or the Americas. Now, let's put this down in statistics. What is the breakup of this population? 68% of Indians are in the 15 to 64 age group. 25% of Indians are under the age of 14 years. That's a big number. 25% of Indians are under the age of 14. 18% of Indians are in the 10 to 19 years of age group. And 26% of India's population is aged 10 to 24. The population of the elderly, as they're defined, is 7%. That is people above the age group of 65. Now, in the midst of this, another important data point. India's total fertility rate is estimated at 2.0, which is actually lower than the replacement rate, which is required to keep up the pace of population growth. The life expectancy of Indian males is at 71 years and for females is at 74 years. India's population, meanwhile, is projected to reach 1.668 billion by the year 2050, ahead of China's 1.317 billion people. China hasn't taken the news too kindly, and a government functionary made a caustic comment saying that the quality of population matters more than the quantity, and they still have 900 million qualified people in their population. Now, while the comment is surely churlish, it's worth looking at what the implications are for India. For decades, India has tried to curb its population growth. Our Abadi has been responsible for most of our ills, for lack of resources, quality of education, and of course, poverty. But we now stand at a pivot where the largest population could be a boon at a time when the world's population is shrinking. When developed nations have aging populations and aren't sure there will be enough of a young workforce in the decades to come to salvage their economies. But it isn't as simple as that. We will have to ensure that 2/3 of the population under the age of 60 has enough work, enough income to live decently. We have to ensure a growing population does not wreck access to fewer resources and is skilled appropriately. So is the stag of most populous nation a boon or a bane? To speak on this, I'm joined today by Poonam Matreja. She's the Executive Director of the Population Foundation of India. Madhavan Narayanan, senior journalist, is with me on the show. I'm speaking with Chitiz Agarwal, founder of Companybench, that's a human resource company, and Rituparna Chakravarti, co-founder and executive director of Team Lease. Welcome to all of you, and thank you so much for speaking with us, Ms. Matreja. Let me begin with your take. We knew this day was coming. It's come officially, and may I add, despite India not having an official number, because our census is still awaited, but what are the implications today? Should we be worried or should we celebrate?
There is neither a reason to celebrate nor is there reason to worry. In fact, India can take comfort in the fact that India's population is declining. As you said, we've reached below fertility replacement level, which means 2 children will replace 2 parents. India did it without any coercion. India did it by investing in development, education, health, though we need to do much more. But we did make these investments, and India does not need to celebrate, but it does need to reflect and think how going forward we are going to start taking care of this large young population and not count only numbers. The young population in India desperately will need skill training, employability, and good wages, as you said. That is also possible to do in India, given how we have shown in technologically we've advanced. India is the fifth largest economy, and going forward, big aspirations, both of the government and aspirations of the people, and especially the women. You know, the young girls know how the better half lives, and they are determined to study, go to college, marry late, have children late. So India has to count on its population and use this as an opportunity to invest much more in skill building, education, health, and reaching the most marginalized women with not just education, but also family planning services.
Okay, so you're saying that we shouldn't celebrate this either, nor should we be worried because we're already starting the decline. China had to force people to have just one child. At least we didn't do that. You know, we're coming to that stage. We're coming to that stage in a better way. But Madhavan Narayanan, some might argue that we should be very excited about this. If I take a leaf from Mr. Elon Musk's book, who believes that we need to populate this world even more. He's leading by example so that, you know, humans can become a multi-planetary species.
Well,
even if I look not so far away in the future, do you think it's a good place we're at?
Yeah, I think we are at a good place. Of course, I cannot compete with Elon Musk in terms of saying outrageous things, but I'm going to say pretty optimistic things based on very interesting ideas. And let me first say that China entered this whole population bomb syndrome, which was then called, at a time when the global technology and global economy and global trade were at a very different frame of mind. Now, you yourself mentioned the aging population of advanced countries, mainly Europe. Now, I also look at Africa and Latin America. It is a very big planet. And I see that there is no reason why India cannot be a very important economic force even for these continents, because the quality of the population is important. And it is not as if we don't have quality. We've had, beginning with the Nehru era IITs to all the private universities. Last week, Dr. Raghuram Rajan wrote an article about how India can become the education powerhouse for the entire world. And healthcare services, if you look at it, we are short of doctors. But the fact is, if you can informalize education and think out of the box in educating and skilling the population in a way where they can reinvent themselves faster, using technologies like digital technologies, which have actually made old-fashioned formal education sort of irrelevant at some level and even easily saleable at another level, in which case you can educate and skill the population at very higher, on a much larger scale. And then you also have this very interesting thing I want to mention, that humanity has a long way to go in coming out with new products and services, which basically means if you look at emerging fields like genomics and cutting-edge medicine, then there's a lot of good work to be done involving human brains and human skills. Therefore, this whole 19th century or early 20th century European idea of just building big factories to create jobs and all jobs having 8-hour working days and all people having 5-day weeks, all people having very high wages, all this should go. We have to think out of the box. Productive labor need not mean, automated productivity with high wages. It just means people do useful, interesting things in a meaningful society. We have to rethink
you have to create wealth. You have to create wealth. You have to create wealth for this growing population, which will include a growing middle class.
I completely agree, but no, let me abolish the word middle class today, Tamanna. There's no such thing called a middle class beyond the point. It's all in, you can have more egalitarian societies. You can have creative employment. Even arts are employment. Sports is employment. if you can bring in a universal basic income framework with creative energies flowing, in which case a lot of great things can be done. This is a country that built great
Universal
temples.
basic income. You've hit the mother lode today, Madhavan.
Yeah.
Universal basic income. It was a concept, just for some backdrop, which emerged first in an economic survey before one of the union budgets a few years ago. It became widely debated and then put in cold storage of many policy constraints. Rituparna, I want you to weigh in on this debate today. Is this a good thing or a bad thing? I mean, we have 30 years to make most of this demographic dividend, which has become, one of those very fancy terms. It gets bandied about everywhere. But what does it mean? What does it mean in real terms? And what does it mean for individuals, for Indians who are going to be 1/5 of humanity? Does it improve our lives?
Good evening. So I think given that in Europe and Japan, the sale of adult diapers far exceeds baby diapers, I think it's a good thing. Just to put things in perspective. But I think, so overarchingly, I think there is nothing to be, prima facie, I think it's a great outcome for India. But before we declare victory and we start tom-tomming this, I think India's challenge is going to be providing equitable access to our youth. And there are certain structural problems. If we don't fix, I think this dividend is not going to end up being dividend for our youth. Just to allude to a few aspects. Now, we have a large population and we also have a large young population, and it's likely to be the way it is for the next 20 years. If things go the way it is currently going, we are adding about 1 million people to the workforce every month. However, we also know that India has 88% of the workforce still in the informal sector, which means they have little or no access to dignity of work. India has to make a transition from farm to non-farm, and the best possible option for it to have a democratic spread of manufacturing all across the country. While through PLI we made some progress, but we have a long way to go to enable non-farm labor to move to formal farm labor to move to non-farm jobs. Size of enterprises in India essentially is a big challenge. So while we've been talking about labor laws as one way to kind of move away from the dwarfs, I mean, we have about more than 1.4 crore GST registration, but maybe 45,000 employers are posting jobs on Naukri. So that is another reality. We have inequitable distribution of skills. Unemployability is a bigger problem than employment. Wages is a problem for India more than jobs, because every Indian who's poor people can't afford to be unemployed. So they are self-employed, which means there's an acute level of subsistence employment. So all I'm trying to say right now, Tamanna, is that it is definitely a good thing that the tide is in our favor. And I'm somebody who's not a believer. Like you actually said something right at the beginning. China tried to orchestrate something and they're paying a price for it. While India, essentially through progress, ensured that we have attained a certain level of some semblance of control over the way population was going, but we didn't orchestrate it. Similarly, I'm not a big believer in having a uniform or a universal wage structure, but I do believe that when equitable distribution and we challenge some of these structural issues, you automatically will see wage levels in the country improving and higher quality improving. And then India will become a powerhouse for talents and skills. Right now, it's the privilege of an elite lot and a tiny sliver of our population who possibly can be representative of the global demand in Ghana. So I think that's my perspective.
I think it cannot be reiterated any less that we chose to educate our women instead of forcing people and telling them how many kids to have and not have. And you have these sort of statements which pop up, and sometimes these legal cases as well, that why is the population growing in one area or of one community? We should put paid to all of this nonsense right now. The way is education. Mr. Agarwal, welcome to the show. I just want your take on how we can ensure that we ride this tide. We have 30 years where we're going to have the world's largest population at a time when there will be a global scarcity for talent. How do we ensure that our best talent stays here and works to improve this economy?
Right. So as Mr. Madhavan mentioned, right, so the first and foremost thing, so see, we have to all think it in terms of, how India is trying to grow, right? How the GDP is growing. So like, for example, this year's India focus is much on manufacturing, right? Manufacturing is going to, like they want manufacturing to be 25% of the GDP, If we talk about, IT, right? IT is right now at 7.5% and they want to increase it to 10%, even 15% in coming years. Okay, so all these opportunities are out there, right? And there are tools out there to achieve that. There are, with the geo wave and all these internet wave, there is a lot of access to all these courses, online, free courses, paid courses, everything is available online there. There are a lot of ways to, like people keep saying, we are only becoming like a bookworm, but there are things out there which can help you to make use of in a practical way. The good thing is like there are a lot of colleges offering, all these quizzes and, things to to become a startup founder and all. But overall, what I feel is like if the youth start, looking on Instagram and all more for learning things rather than just, sharing jokes and all, I think it can be super
confused,
productive.
Chitiz. What are you trying to say? I'm sorry, I'm confused. आप बोलना क्या चाह रहे हो?
No, so see, my whole point here is like, we want to make sure like opportunities are out there, and there are billions of there are tons of opportunities out there. It's just that, the youth himself want to, open themselves for the job. What I read somewhere is like, below 30 age of people, only 50% of the people want to do a job. Remaining of them, don't want to do anything below like a white collar job, right? But there are jobs around in the blue collar. There are jobs around in multiple places.
I'm not sure.
Run a company.
I'm not sure what data you're quoting. But when you have people dropping out of the labor force, it's not because they feel like sitting at home and fanning themselves. It's because they don't have the opportunities of jobs catering to their skills. The job is just not there. Yes, Madhavan wants to come in.
Yeah, I think, let me pick up from where Chitiz said. You have the National Skill Development Mission already on. When we have to informalize education and scale it up in such a way that reinvention becomes part of the DNA of the young Indians, so that they can learn fast. I think my friend Dr. Shogata Mitra once came up with an idea called just-in-time system of education, just as matching the just-in-time system of inventory management that the Japanese came up in manufacturing. You need constant rescaling, but the new technologies enable that faster. And we also need what you would call micro labor, as I call it. Everything need not be on large scale. Once you have a universal basic income as a pizza base, you can put toppings of various kinds of skills. In fact, my friend Abhijit Baduri, who's been leading authority on HR, says that in the future people will have not one but 4 careers. You can have 4 different careers and juggle them. You can even be a chef while being a data scientist. So we need Indians to think anew and snap out of this whole 19th century European mindset of a lifelong job with, you can have 2-day weeks and 3-day weeks with 3D printing and everything. The idea is to be productive. The idea is to be creative. The idea is to also, if I may add, distribute the population. India's density of population is 451, whereas Tamanna, the city you're living in, Mumbai, is 24,000. Delhi, where I live, is 29,000. Just compare it with the national density of population. And you will feel the population bomb around you, whereas actually if you knew how to use new technologies to distribute population in the villages, non-farm labor can also be harnessed for climate change. Climate change can be an opportunity if you know how to play the game. The point is
that's an important
just one last word. Let us economics, as in the current sense, I have a full book in the head on this. Current lot of economists are thinking too linear. They haven't come out of the John Maynard Keynes era. Most of them are completely unaware of what technology is doing to human imagination. And that is where the solution lies. Think out of the box.
I think the point of resources, I just want to drill down a bit on that. Ms. Mutreja, let me come to you on that. We already have cities bursting at the seams. You have water scarcity. You have a lot of issues as far as resources go. These are going to increase as your population increases as well. Your access to energy, your access to food. What is the plan there?
Absolutely. We need to make this is an opportunity, as I said earlier, and it's also an opportunity to make a plan. We have both pull factors and push factors why people migrate to cities. We need to invest in jobs and not temporary construction jobs and Narega only in the villages. And, India has for many, many decades neglected the fact that we have a lot of skills in the village. I'm referring to handicrafts and people. We have hundreds of amazing skills, in China with 10, 15 skills has captured the global market. And the kind of design, import and production and innovation we are seeing in India in the craft sector, we can absolutely invest in at the village level. We also, post-COVID, gone is the time when people had to be in a city to do a certain job. There are many jobs that can be done sitting in your home, whether it's a small town or, of course, if connectivity is available. Third, people will need to do multiple jobs, as was said earlier. And I'm sorry, it's not the European mindset. In America, Europe, you see people doing multiple jobs, and that kind of creative energy has to come out. Third, it was mentioned that people don't want to do white-collar jobs or blue-collar jobs. It's because there isn't dignity of labor. There isn't whether it is domestic labor workers or it is workers in the factories, we pay them very little and we don't treat them with dignity. I think it's time that the rich began to, especially those industries that are doing well, began to pay better wages and give social security to their staff.
You have a huge supply. You have a huge supply and a lower demand. That is also what is, impacting wage rates. Ritu, please come in on this.
Tamanna,
my view here is that Tamanna, India's problem is that, I talk to CHROs every now and then, and the common theme in most of my conversation is that I'm looking for that right person and I can't find the right person. And on the other hand, we have these, one of my recruiters came up to me a few days back saying that there's resumes of 20,000 graduates. I've sent them to 7 or more interviews. They've got rejected. So please, can we go ahead and delete them? So that is India's reality, Tamanna. So I personally believe that wages can't be dictated. Wages will automatically go up when we focus on making our kids, our youth, employable in a systematic manner. And the archaic way in which our education system operates, where focuses on imparting knowledge and not livelihood skills, has to change. 90% as per the National Occupation Code data, 90% of our youth comes out with knowledge and zero skills, but 90% of the jobs that we have in hand require skills and little or no knowledge. And until and unless we have massive innovation and transformation of our education landscape, where there is a direct correlation, there are benefits and incentives linked with the education structure, linked with people's livelihood and the kind of jobs that they end up with, this won't change. And that's why I feel, just like India in the telecom space leapfrog many technologies and have evolved into one of those countries which has the latest, even in the real UPI, another example where digitization has leapfrogged us into a situation where the United States is trying to emulate what we have done. We need a similar kind of a massive innovation and change in the education employability structure. And I believe we can leverage the national education policies guidance, where there is reference of degree apprenticeship. We can massify digital apprenticeship. We can bring academia and corporates together to make this happen. And trust me, then after that, there is no stopping our youth. We have to make this happen.
I don't want to be the sort of cloudy one bursting, all of this. But there was a report just yesterday that half of Indian degrees are useless, and
true.
Cannot get the people who've taken those degrees into a job. This is the reality of where we are. Madhavan is talking about, people working 4 or 5 jobs. The biggest fights you see today are for government jobs.
Exactly.
Everyone still wants to be hired by the government of India because that's a cushy job that doesn't go away. Now, I want to just add one more dimension. Let me come to Mr. Agarwal and then I'll come to you, Madhavan. I want to add one more dimension. One other part of this is, yes, our population is growing. The number of young will be high, but the number of elderly is also increasing. It's increased to 7%. Right now, it used to be much lesser, and it is going to go on increasing as lifespans increase as well. We don't have a system here where we take care of the elderly. There's no social security net. You're pretty much on your own with whatever little pension you've got if you've been in the private sector or the government sector. But people are going to live longer. How do we ensure that there is dignity in that life? Mr. Agarwal.
It all depends. Honestly, as you rightly said, why people prefer a government job is it comes with a pension, it comes with a lot of benefits, even after retirement, right? If you are a businessman or if you are an entrepreneur, I'm sure you have done enough for you. You have, created those FDs and mutual funds and all those, different things to take care of your retirement, right? But if you are like an employee, right? If you have those things, I think it's and this has already been happening in US, right? Where I think there is a recent report which has studies you cannot retire in US, right? You have to work. Like people are working at very old age as well. And I've traveled to US a lot, and I've seen people, even after in 70s and 80s, they like to work or they have to work, either or. But overall, these kind of things are there. So what I feel is here, one of the most important thing is everyone has to, and I'm talking about this current generation, which will eventually reach to that age group, right? Is they have to be self-dependent. They have to, create the skills. They have to be independent, where they can take care of themselves. They can take care of their financials so that it doesn't hit hard. But they can keep on boosting the economy of India. Yeah.
No, but all of this is all well and good. The government will have to step in with a plan. Madhavan, as we conclude this debate, I want you to talk a bit about where the policy planning comes in. You can't just continue business as usual.
Thank you. I was going to...
When you have a figure like this. 2011, by the way, was our last census. It was supposed to happen in 2021, but then COVID hit. It's 2023. We've not started yet. So we have no official data about the quality of this population, what the actual figure is, what the demographics are. We don't have the data to make astute policy. Yes, Madhavan?
Three things I want to say. First of all, picking up from where Chitiz said, as population ages, not only in India, but also the world, India can be the source. The younger population can help the older population through assisted living initiatives and enterprises, even in mountains, beaches, wherever. I think it should be treated itself as a sunrise sector, and that is a good thing. And increasing mechanization will help us do something at lower cost or even remotely in some respects. Coming to your point, I'm absolutely on the ball. I was going to remark tongue-in-cheek that we need the Planning Commission all over again, or Niti Aayog has to do the job. We need a lot of forecasting done at 3 levels. How technology is going to change lifestyles. And we want to avoid the 3 idiots syndrome where every mother and father sell their kids to engineering schools and they don't get employment because they're unemployable, or even Facebook or Meta is laying off people as we speak. The second thing is there should be a talent audit. Apart from the quality of the population in terms of education and skills, we also need to understand human behavior. We need much more research on behavioral sciences, because that is where a lot of the unemployment problems lie. It is not, you cannot imagine an engineering employment as the panacea for everything. Human beings need actualization and self-fulfillment, and blending a universal basic income program with talent audit and forecasting has to be done by policy planning agencies. And we need something that looks like the old planning commission. There used to be something called okay. So whether this government likes it or not, you need a country.
No, you have a lot of bodies giving advice. You have Niti Aayog, etc. And we will have to, essentially, you can't wing it for the next 30 years. You can't wing it for the next 30 years. Let's be honest. There has been no great plan to come to this day either way. For decades, we've tried to control our population. Till now, it was looked at as a failure of population control. Today, we're celebrating because everyone else realized that they control their population too much. They have no one left to work, and they have a lot of elderly who the state has to support with pensions. That has become a huge, huge problem. All right, we'll take a very short break. But on the other side, we are talking about truly the top headline of the day. Everyone's debating same-sex marriages. It's a case going on in courts right now. But what is the point of view of couples who are hoping to get the same rights as other citizens? After the break, I speak with Dr. Roop Gursahani. He's a neurologist, and Neil Pate, a journalist. That conversation coming up after the break. I'm going to ask them why they think they need to have the right to get married in this country. Stay tuned.